Good afternoon, all. Thank you for joining us today. As outlined, I will be covering who Germinal are, followed by some climate smart talks about our mixtures from Amenity Director Richard Brown and best practices for establishment and maintenance from Graham Parker. Now, the man in the picture on the left is Samuel McCausland, who is our MD William Gilbert's great-great-great-great-great-grandfather. Samuel started trading for grass seed from the Belfast store pictured here on the right back in 1825. So 200 years later, we are celebrating our double centenary. 150 years of that as a specialist seed company, entered the GB agriculture and amenities market in 1960. A huge part of our business is innovation, from our HSG material, hybrid brassica, and everlasting rhizomatous clover found in our climate smart mixtures. As a company, we have a passion to deliver quality across all aspects of our business, from seed quality and supply chain to customer support and knowledge base. To deliver this in the UK, we have a team of 4 specialists on the agricultural team, with another 5 on the amenity team, all supported by a customer service desk of 6 at Lincoln. Lincoln is our production and distribution facility of the UK, whilst our site in Tipperary serves Ireland. Germinal is directly active in GB, Northern Ireland, Ireland, and New Zealand, alongside selling to another 27 countries worldwide. To back up our innovation and deliver quality products through proven trials, we created 3 Germinal research stations in Wiltshire, Aberystwyth, and Lincoln, New Zealand. Of the 108 people employed, 20 are involved in R&D, showing a commitment to future forage production and climate smart landscape solutions. Looking to the future, we have many more innovations in the pipeline, spearheaded by our impressive R&D team. So now that leads me to hand over to Richard Brown, our Amenity Director. So I'll just hand over to you now, Richard.
Hello, everybody. So I'm going to talk to you now specifically about our climate smart mixtures within our larger A-range mixtures or grass seed range. Now, for a start, I'm going to sort of just talk about, what do we mean by climate smart? Well, essentially, climate smart is an ethos by which Germinal, from this point on, is putting at the forefront of all that we do. So the varieties we breed, the R&D we conduct, and the strategies we bring to the marketplace. And this is essentially because Germinal believes climate change is the largest challenge we all face. More pertinently, legislative change designed to combat climate change is going to orchestrate all that we do going forward. And it is that legislative change and the different ways in which you are going to be asked to work that we are trying to find solutions to now, so that when this legislative change impacts on your working practices, we have the solutions already in place. So in a little while, I'm going to talk about clover. But before I do, I have a question for you, just to see where you're all coming from with your landscape schemes, your specifications, and your own jobs that you do. A quick question. How many of you are trying to reduce the amount of nitrogen fertilizer you use on jobs, specifically compound granular nitrogen fertilizer? And what is your reason for doing so? So it's evident there that most of you are trying to reduce the nitrogen fertilizer you use, and several of you are looking to reduce that nitrogen fertilizer because you are looking to reduce nitrous oxide emissions. And that is where we are coming from with regards the climate smart mixtures we're introducing. It's little known fact that nitrous oxide is 300 times more damaging as a greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide, and it lasts just as long. So reducing the amount of nitrogen fertilizer, especially standard compound nitrogen fertilizer, that we can use on landscape schemes is, it's a no-brainer. It's an elementary way that we can be more climate smart in our landscape specifications and in the way we work. There is the next answer there is that many of you are looking to do this because you believe that you're going to be legislated to stop this in the future. Well, absolutely. Going back to my previous point, we definitely feel that it won't be long until the amount of nitrogen fertilizer you can use on your landscape schemes is severely restricted, if not banned altogether. So if we can get to a point where we can supply mixtures where you no longer need to use nitrogen fertilizer, or you can use a limited amount and you can use just some slow release fertilizer, which are far better than the standard compound fertilizers, then we're winning there. We're offering you a solution to that problem. And then the final answer, many of you said, I'm trying to reduce nitrogen fertilizer, it's getting more expensive. Well, that's the thing. It is getting more expensive. And I think this is partly the reason that we've become so dependent upon it. You know, post-war, we needed fertilizer that could make things grow very quickly and was cost effective. And standard compound fertilizers did that. They got wet, they released nitrogen, and everything grew. And right up until a few years ago, when we didn't know how damaging that was to the atmosphere, they were a good solution. But they've become more expensive now anyway, with those resources becoming more finite. So for all those reasons, it's perfectly reasonable that we look to reduce nitrogen fertilizers, especially standard compound fertilizers. And I'll just make one final point on that. Good slow release fertilizers, nitrogen fertilizers, are an option here, a much preferable option here, because they release nitrogen much more slowly and steadily, and they need moisture and temperature to do that. Standard compound fertilizers get wet, and it's a known fact that up to 60% of that nitrogen in those products is either leached into watercourses or volatilized into the atmosphere. So they're the real villain of the piece here. Fortunately, there is a solution, and the solution is clover. Clover is one of nature's wonders. Clover fixes clean, free nitrogen. It's worth repeating that, clean, free nitrogen. If you look at this picture here, you can see the nodules on the roots, clover roots. Clover takes atmospheric nitrogen, fixes it in its roots, sustains itself, and feeds that nitrogen to all the plants around it. And it does that consistently all of the time. Now, before I go any further, I've got another question here. This is a bit more of a sort of pub quiz question, but how much nitrogen do you think clover fixes, clover fixes, per hectare per annum? There we go. I think the answers are in. The answer is 50 to 150 kilos of nitrogen per hectare per annum. So that is a big swing there. And the reason for that is that different clover will fix different amounts of nitrogen based upon the climatic conditions that year, the soil type it's being grown on, and if you've got a sort of area that's already got clover in, if you feed that area with the nitrogen fertilizer, in actual fact, the clover fixes less. It works less hard at fixing that nitrogen. So there's several reasons for that big swing in nitrogen fixation. But the great news is that even at 50 kilos of nitrogen per hectare per annum, that is more than enough to sustain a low to medium intense sort of parkland or back garden area. That's enough nitrogen to sustain the plants in that area. 150 kilos of nitrogen per hectare per annum is actually enough to sustain a high intensity sports pitch. But the great news about clover doesn't stop there. Clover improves soil structure. So you see here, we've got the two root tubes. You've got a monoculture of grass on the left, and you've got the grass and clover